The massive starship Eternal Glory moved silently through the void of space. Its metal hull gleamed silver against the darkness, decorated with symbols that showed the power of the Galactic Confederation. Inside the command bridge, Ambassador Zethkara stood tall on his 4 legs, his purple skin glowing softly under the ship's lights. "Report," Zethkara said, his voice deep and commanding. His large eyes, each the size of a human head, focused on the holographic display in front of him. "The target planet is directly ahead, Ambassador," replied Commander Velthari, a spider-like creature with 8 arms working different control panels at once. "Our scouts have been watching this world for 6 cycles now. The creatures call their planet Earth and themselves humans." Zethkara nodded slowly. In his 300 years of life, he had helped bring 47 different species into the Confederation. This would be his 48th. It should be easy, he thought. The reports made these humans sound almost pathetic. "Show me the data again," he ordered. The hologram changed, showing a blue and green planet spinning slowly. Numbers and text appeared around it, all in the flowing script of the Confederation's ancient language. "Humans live only 80 standard cycles," Velthari read from the data. "They have no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armor plating on their skin. They cannot even survive their own planet's weather without artificial coverings." Another officer, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, added more information. "They still fight wars among themselves, Ambassador. Our scouts counted 195 separate political groups on their planet. They cannot even agree on simple things like trade or territory." Zethkara found this amusing. Every other species the Confederation had encountered had at least achieved planetary unity before developing space travel. These humans were still children squabbling over toys. "What about their technology?" he asked. "Primitive," Velthari answered quickly. "They burn fossil fuels for energy. Their fastest ships use chemical rockets that take them days to reach their own moon. They have barely begun to split atoms and only for weapons. No energy shields, no gravity manipulation, no quantum communication." The crystal being made a sound like breaking glass, which was how his species laughed. "Ambassador, they still use metal projectiles as weapons. They fire small pieces of lead at each other using controlled explosions." Zethkara walked to the large window that showed space ahead of them. In the distance, Earth grew larger as they approached. Such a beautiful world, he thought. It would make a fine addition to the Confederation once its people learned their place. "Have they detected us?" he asked. "No, sir. Their sensor technology is too basic. They can barely see their own solar system clearly." This was always Zethkara's favorite part of First Contact. The moment when a new species realized they were not alone in the universe. The shock, the fear, the quick understanding that they had no choice but to join the Confederation or face destruction. He had perfected his approach over the centuries. First, a dramatic arrival that showed the Confederation's superior technology. Then, a demonstration of their power that made resistance seem hopeless. Finally, the offer that every species received: "Join us willingly, and you will be protected and given technology beyond your dreams. Refuse, and your world will be reduced to ash." "Prepare the standard First Contact protocol," Zethkara commanded. "Full appearance over their largest population centers. I want every human on that planet to see our ships and understand what they're facing." "Yes, Ambassador. Shall we target their military bases for the demonstration?" Zethkara considered. No. These humans seem too primitive to have anything worthy of the name military. Just disable their primitive satellites and communication networks. Let them know we can reach anywhere on their planet whenever we choose. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Earth filled the view now, clouds swirling over blue oceans and brown continents. Zethkara could see the lights of human cities on the night side of the planet, scattered like tiny stars. "Such a young species," he murmured to himself. "They probably still think they're alone in the universe." "Ambassador," Velthari called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the planet. Radio waves and something they call internet. Should we listen?" "Briefly. It might help us understand how to best present our offer." the bridge filled with the sounds of human voices speaking in dozens of different languages. Music played from some signals while others carried what seemed to be news or entertainment. Zethkara listened for a few minutes, his universal translator working to make sense of the chaos. They're talking about wars, he noted. Something called terrorism and economic collapse and climate change. This species is clearly destroying itself slowly. Perfect, said the crystal being. They'll welcome our guidance. Begin the demonstration, Zethkara ordered. The eternal glory moved into position above Earth's largest continent. Around the planet, 50 other Confederation ships took their positions. At exactly the same moment, they all became visible, their cloaking shields dropping away. On Earth's surface, humans stopped what they were doing and looked up. In cities around the world, people pointed at the sky as massive alien ships appeared overhead like dark clouds. The ships were beautiful and terrifying, smooth curves of metal and energy that clearly came from a technology far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Now disable their communications, Zethkara said. Energy beams reached down from the ships not to destroy but to temporarily shut down human technology. Satellites went dead. Internet connections failed. Radio stations went silent. In the space of minutes, human civilization lost its voice. Excellent, Zethkara said with satisfaction. Now they know they cannot hide from us or call for help that will never come. Tomorrow we'll make contact with their leaders and explain their new reality. But something strange happened that night. Instead of panic and chaos, the humans did something unexpected. They organized. Without their electronic communications, they used older methods. People ran from house to house spreading news by word of mouth. Amateur radio operators, whose equipment the aliens had missed, connected groups of survivors. Church bells rang out coded messages. Signal fires lit up hilltops. The Confederation monitored these activities with growing confusion. Most species collapsed into disorder when their technology failed. These humans seemed to be pulling together instead of falling apart. Ambassador, Velthari reported the next morning, something unusual is happening. The humans are gathering in large groups, not to surrender but to organize. They're sharing resources and information. Zethkara frowned. This was not how first contact was supposed to work. Perhaps they're preparing to surrender as a unified group. It would save us time. But when the human leaders finally responded to the Confederation's demands, their answer was not what anyone expected. The message came from an elderly human female who identified herself as Dr. Maria Santos, speaking for something called the United Earth Emergency Council. She appeared on every screen the aliens had provided for communication, her gray hair pulled back and her dark eyes steady and calm. People of the Galactic Confederation, she began, we have received your offer. We understand that you believe. We have no choice but to accept. We understand that you see us as primitive and weak. We understand that you have done this to 847 other worlds. Zethkara leaned forward, interested despite himself. This human showed no fear, no desperation. How strange. We also understand, Dr. Santos continued, that you have never encountered a species quite like ours. We humans have spent our entire history fighting each other, learning from each other, and surviving things that would destroy other species. We have learned to work together when we must, even when we disagree about everything else. She paused, and her next words sent a chill through every being on the Confederation ship. You offer us advanced technology in exchange for our freedom. We decline. You threaten us with destruction if we refuse. We accept that risk. You believe you can defeat us because we seem weak and divided. You are about to learn why that assumption is dangerous. The transmission ended. For a long moment, the bridge of the eternal glory was silent. Then Zethkara began to laugh, a sound like distant thunder. Brave little creatures, he said. I almost admire their spirit very well. If they choose extinction over wisdom, we shall grant their wish. Commander, prepare the fleet for planetary bombardment. 3 days from now, we'll reduce their major cities to glass. That should convince the survivors to be more reasonable. But as the Confederation ships moved into attack formation, None of them noticed the small objects launching from Earth's surface. Crude by galactic standards but built with human determination, these devices would soon change everything. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to survive. And they had been fighting for survival their entire existence. Admiral Krextoth had commanded Confederation fleets for over 2 centuries. He had crushed rebellions on 40 worlds and brought peace to entire star systems. Standing on the bridge of his flagship Divine Judgment, he should have felt confident about the coming battle. Instead, he felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "Earth's defense satellites are moving into position. They appear to be armed with primitive kinetic weapons." Krextoth's 4 eyes studied the display. The human satellites looked like metal cans compared to his elegant warships. "How many do they have?" "Approximately 3,000, sir, all launched in the past 72 hours. 3,000 satellites launched in 3 days? Krextoth found this impossible to believe. The fastest any Confederation world had ever deployed orbital defenses was 6 months, and that was with advanced technology. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface. Large numbers of aircraft are taking off from every continent." The main display showed Earth's atmosphere filled with moving dots. Thousands of aircraft rose from the planet like angry insects disturbed from their nest. But these weren't military ships. Krextoth's computer identified them as cargo planes, passenger aircraft, and even small private flying machines. "What are they doing?" he wondered aloud. His answer came when the first wave of human aircraft reached orbit. The cargo planes opened their doors and released clouds of small objects. Passenger planes did the same. Even tiny personal aircraft somehow managed to climb high enough to drop their loads into space. "Admiral!" the tactical officer shouted. "They're deploying mines, thousands of them." The space around Earth filled with crude but effective explosive devices. Some were clearly improvised from industrial equipment. Others looked like they had been built in someone's garage. All of them carried enough explosive power to damage a Confederation ship. "This is impossible," Krextoth muttered. How did they build so many weapons so quickly? What he didn't understand was that humans had not built weapons. They had turned everything they could find into weapons. Car factories now made missile parts. Electronics companies built guidance systems. Even toy manufacturers contributed components for the defense effort. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planet." The image of Dr. Santos appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Krextoth could see humans working frantically at computer terminals and communication equipment. "Admiral Krextoth," she said, somehow knowing his name. "We know you plan to attack our cities in 3 days. We want you to understand something before you begin. Every human city you target has been evacuated. Our people are now living in underground shelters, mountain caves, and hidden bases we built in just 72 hours. Krextoth's confidence wavered. Evacuating entire cities was supposed to take months of planning. How had they moved millions of people so quickly? "You think this changes nothing," Dr. Santos continued. "You believe you can simply bomb our empty cities and force us to surrender. But you don't understand what you're fighting. You've conquered 847 species, but every one of them was united and peaceful when you arrived. You've never fought a species that learned how to survive by fighting each other for thousands of years." The transmission switched to images from around Earth, humans working together in ways that seemed impossible to Krextoth. Former soldiers from different countries trained civilian volunteers. Scientists from rival nations shared research. Religious leaders who had preached against each other for centuries now prayed together for their species' survival. "What you see as our weakness is actually our strength," Dr. Santos explained. "We've spent our entire history learning how to fight, how to adapt, how to survive when everything seems hopeless. And now, for the first time in our existence, we're not fighting each other. We're fighting for each other." The transmission ended, leaving Krextoth staring at a blank screen. "Admiral," his weapons officer asked, "should we proceed with the bombardment?" Krextoth hesitated. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever prepared for battle this quickly or this thoroughly. Most worlds surrendered immediately when faced with the Confederation's superior technology. Those that fought back used conventional military tactics that were easy to predict and defeat. "Sir," the weapons officer pressed. "Begin the attack," Krextoth finally ordered. "Target their largest population centers." The Confederation ships fired their energy weapons at Earth's major cities. Beams of superheated plasma struck New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other human centers. The attacks were precise and devastating, turning buildings to vapor and leaving nothing but glass craters where millions of people had once lived. But as the smoke cleared, Krextoth realized something was wrong. The humans were not surrendering. Instead, they were attacking. The first surprise came from the orbital mines. When Confederation ships moved to lower orbits for better targeting, the crude human explosives began detonating around them. The devices were simple, but there were so many of them that even the Confederation's advanced shields couldn't stop them all. The divine judgment shook as a mine exploded against its hull. Damage was minimal, but Krextoth was shocked that these primitives had managed to hurt his ship at all. "Admiral," the tactical officer called out urgently, "human ships approaching from multiple directions." Krextoth looked at the display and couldn't believe what he saw. Hundreds of human spacecraft were rising from Earth's surface, but these weren't military vessels. His computer identified them as cargo ships, research vessels, and even luxury cruise spacecraft. They had been hastily modified with weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum. "They're attacking us with civilian ships?" Krextoth asked, in disbelief. The human fleet spread out around the Confederation forces, moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. Some ships flew directly toward the alien vessels, while others tried to circle around behind them. A few even seemed to be running away only to turn back and attack from unexpected angles. "Their formation is chaos," his tactical officer reported. "No discipline, no coordination. We should destroy them easily." But the chaos turned out to be the humans' advantage. Confederation tactics relied on predicting enemy movements based on standard military doctrine. The human pilots weren't following any doctrine at all. They flew like people who had learned to drive in busy city traffic, changing direction suddenly and taking risks that no sensible military pilot would ever attempt. Captain Sarah Chen piloted a converted passenger liner called New Hope. She had been a commercial pilot for 15 years, flying tourists to vacation destinations. Now she was leading a squadron of cargo ships against alien warships that could have destroyed her vessel with a single shot. "All ships, this is Chen," she broadcast on the radio. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them pay for every inch of space around our world." Her ship dove toward a Confederation cruiser, firing missiles that had been built in automobile factories just days before. The alien ship's shields absorbed the explosions easily, but Chen wasn't trying to destroy it. She was trying to distract. While the cruiser focused on her attack, 3 cargo ships approached from its blind spots. They weren't firing weapons. Instead, they rammed directly into the alien vessel's hull. The impacts sent shockwaves through both ships. The cargo vessels were destroyed instantly, but they had cracked the cruiser's armor plating. More importantly, they had shown every human pilot watching that the alien ships could be hurt. "Admiral," Krextoth's damage control officer reported, "the cruiser Star of Victory has hull breaches on 3 decks. The humans, they used their ships as weapons." Krextoth stared at the tactical display. "They sacrificed their own ships?" "Yes, sir. And their pilots made no attempt to escape." This was beyond Krextoth's understanding. In civilized warfare, when a ship was doomed, its crew evacuated to be rescued later. These humans had chosen to die with their vessels, using their own destruction as a weapon. The battle continued for 6 hours. The Confederation had superior technology, better shields, and more powerful weapons. They destroyed human ship after human ship. But for every vessel they eliminated, the humans seemed to learn something new. Human pilots began coordinating their ramming attacks, overwhelming single targets with multiple impacts. They used their destroyed ships as cover, hiding behind the wreckage to launch surprise attacks. Most disturbing of all, they started copying Confederation tactics, adapting them in ways that made no sense but somehow worked. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen. Her ship was damaged, smoke visible behind her, but her eyes were steady and determined. "Admiral Krextoth," she said, "I want you to understand something. You came here thinking we'd be easy to defeat because we're weak and divided, but you made one big mistake." "And what is that, human?" Chen smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "You thought our differences made us weak, but our differences are what make us strong. We've learned to fight in every possible way because we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Desert warfare, mountain warfare, jungle warfare, ocean warfare, winter warfare, city warfare. We know how to fight when we're 1 year had passed since the Confederation's first attack on Earth, and Admiral Krextoth was beginning to understand that he was fighting a war unlike any in galactic history. His fleet had grown from 50 ships to 200, yet the humans continued to resist with a stubbornness that defied all military logic. "Status report," Krextoth demanded as he entered the command center. "Sir, the humans have established 17 new orbital stations in the past month," reported Commander Velthari. "They're using asteroids they've somehow moved from their system's belt." Krextoth studied the tactical display with growing frustration. The humans had turned asteroid mining into a military operation, hollowing out space rocks and filling them with weapons, factories, and living quarters. Worse, they had somehow learned to move these massive objects using technology that shouldn't have been possible with their primitive understanding of physics. "How are they doing this?" he asked his science officer, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Kethmol. "We're not entirely certain, Admiral. They appear to have reverse-engineered our gravity manipulation technology from the wreckage of our destroyed ships, but they're using it in ways we never considered." On Earth's surface, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked in a laboratory that had once been a subway tunnel under New York City. Around her, teams of human scientists and engineers labored over pieces of alien technology, trying to understand how it worked and how to use it against its creators. "Maria, look at this," Elena called to her colleague, Dr. Maria Santos, who had become Earth's unofficial leader during the crisis. Elena held up a small device that glowed with soft blue light. "This is from a Confederation communications array. It uses quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across space." "Can we use it?" Maria asked. "Better than that. We can improve it." Elena connected the alien device to a cluster of human-built computers. The Confederation's technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly standardized. Every ship uses the same systems, follows the same protocols. They've spent 3,000 years perfecting their technology, which means they've also spent 3,000 years making it predictable. She activated her makeshift hybrid device and information began flowing across the screen. "I've tapped into their command network. We can see everything they're planning." But Elena's breakthrough was just one of hundreds happening across Earth and in the hidden bases throughout the solar system. Human creativity, unleashed by desperation and united by necessity, was producing innovations at a speed that amazed even the humans themselves. In a converted mining station on the far side of Earth's moon, Colonel Marcus Thompson watched his teams train for the war's next phase. The soldiers under his command came from every nation on Earth, speaking dozens of languages but united by a single purpose. "Remember," Thompson told a group of new recruits, "we're not trying to fight like the Confederation expects. We're fighting like humans." The recruits were learning tactics that no galactic military academy had ever taught: how to use debris as cover in space battles, how to turn civilian equipment into military assets, how to coordinate attacks using hand signals when electronic communication was jammed. Most importantly, they were learning to think like humans, who had spent their entire evolutionary history as persistence hunters. They didn't need to win every battle. They just needed to make every battle cost the enemy more than they could afford to lose. "Sir," Sergeant Williams reported, "the Confederation fleet is moving into bombardment position. They're planning to target our remaining surface cities." Thompson nodded grimly. This was what they had been preparing for. "Signal all units. Operation Swarm begins now." Across Earth's solar system, human forces that had been hiding in asteroid fields behind moons and in the shadows of planets suddenly revealed themselves. It wasn't an army in any traditional sense. Instead, it was a collection of improvised, fighting units using whatever they could find. Mining ships armed with cutting lasers engaged Confederation cruisers. Research vessels modified with missile launchers attacked from unexpected angles. Even civilian rescue ships had been turned into bombers, their cargo holds filled with explosives. But the real surprise came from Earth itself. As the Confederation fleet moved into position to destroy humanity's remaining cities, the planet's surface erupted with activity. What the aliens had thought were ruins from their previous bombardment were actually camouflaged launch sites. Thousands of missiles rose from Earth's surface, but these weren't ordinary weapons. Human engineers had learned to copy Confederation shield technology. Then they had figured out how to make weapons that could penetrate those same shields. Impossible, Krextoth shouted, as his flagship's shields failed under bombardment from weapons that should have been centuries beyond human capability. Admiral, Kethmal reported, his voice filled with confusion. They're using our own technology against us, but they've modified it. The quantum frequency is wrong. The power distribution doesn't match our specifications, but somehow it works. Better than our original design. The battle for Earth's orbit became a nightmare for the Confederation forces. They had trained for thousands of years to fight other civilized species that followed established rules of warfare. The humans followed no rules at all. Captain Jessica Park commanded a converted space station that had once been used for scientific research. Her crew had spent months figuring out how to make their station mobile, turning it into a massive weapon platform that moved like a ship but fought like a fortress. "Target the cruiser on our starboard side," she ordered her weapons officer, a former video game programmer who had learned military tactics from strategy games. "Ma'am, that ship is 3 times our size," the young man replied. "Then we'll have to hit it 3 times as hard." Park's station fired everything it had at the Confederation cruiser. Lasers designed for cutting metal, particle accelerators meant for scientific experiments, and even mining charges repurposed as explosives. The alien ship's shields held, but the constant bombardment forced it to retreat. "Good job," Park announced to her crew. "Now let's find another target." This was the pattern across the entire battle. Human forces weren't trying to destroy the Confederation fleet completely. They were trying to make every engagement so costly and unpredictable that the aliens would lose the will to fight. The turning point came when a group of human engineers managed to capture an intact Confederation supply ship. Within hours, teams of human technicians were crawling through its corridors, studying every system and device they could find. "This changes everything," Dr. Santos announced to the emergency council that governed Earth's war effort. "We now have access to their manufacturing technology, their navigation systems, and most importantly, their star charts." The captured ship revealed something that shocked the human leadership. The Galactic Confederation was not as powerful as they pretended to be. Their empire was vast but thin, spread across thousands of worlds with minimal forces defending each system. "They're bullies," Maria explained to the assembled leaders. "They win through intimidation and superior technology, not through actual military strength. They've never had to fight a real war because every species they encountered surrendered quickly." "What does this mean for us?" asked General Harrison, the former head of NATO forces. "It means we can hurt them," Elena Vasquez answered. "Their entire strategy depends on quick, overwhelming victories. If we can drag this war out, if we can make them fight for every inch of space, we can break their will to continue." The captured Confederation ship also revealed the locations of alien supply bases and shipyards. Human leaders began planning operations that would have been impossible just months before. "We're going to take this fight to them," Thompson announced at the next strategy meeting. "They want to conquer Earth? Fine. But they're going to learn that attacking humanity means fighting humanity everywhere in the galaxy." As the second year of war began, Confederation intelligence officers noticed something that filled them with dread. Human ships were appearing in distant star systems, attacking supply convoys and raiding poorly defended outposts. But these weren't just hit-and-run attacks. The humans were learning. Every captured piece of technology made them stronger. Every battle taught them new tactics. Every setback made them more determined. Admiral Krextoth received reports from across Confederation space. Human raiders had destroyed a shipyard in the Centauri system. A supply depot near Vega had been captured and stripped of all useful equipment. Most disturbing, human ships were now appearing in systems that should have been impossible for them to reach. "How are they moving so quickly across space?" Krextoth demanded. "We believe they've developed their own faster-than-light technology," Kethmal reported reluctantly. "It's based on our quantum drive systems, but they've made modifications. We don't understand." "Modifications?" "Yes, sir. Their ships can appear anywhere in a star system, not just at the standard jump points. It makes their movements completely unpredictable." Krextoth felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Confederation had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years because their technology gave them absolute advantages. If humans could match that technology, the Great Hall of the Confederation High Council had not seen such chaos in 3,000 years. Representatives from 800 worlds gathered in emergency session as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The human war, which should have ended in days, had been raging for 3 years and was spreading to other star systems. Supreme Chancellor Thisra, an ancient being whose crystalline body had witnessed the rise of the Confederation itself, called for order with a sound like breaking mountains. Her voice echoed through the vast chamber as species after species demanded answers. "The humans have captured the Kepler Station shipyards," announced Representative Zorthak, his insectoid features twitching with agitation. "3 of our newest dreadnoughts were under construction there. Now they belong to the human fleet." "Worse," added Representative Felnara, a serpentine being from the core worlds. "Our intelligence reports that humans are not just stealing our technology, they're improving it." Supreme Chancellor Thisra focused her ancient eyes on the holographic display showing the current war status. Red zones marked areas under human control or influence. 2 years ago, there had been 1 red dot around Earth's solar system. Now, red zones scattered across a quarter of the galaxy. "Explain to me," Tysera said slowly, "how a primitive species that had never left their own star system is now operating faster-than-light ships across our empire." Admiral Krextoth, appearing via quantum communication from his flagship, looked older and more tired than when the war began. "Chancellor, we underestimated their learning capability. Humans don't just reverse engineer our technology, they reinvent it." He brought up technical schematics that made the assembled representatives gasp. "This is a human warship built 18 months ago. It uses Confederation shield technology, but notice the power distribution. They found a way to make shields 40% more efficient than our own designs." "That's impossible," protested Chief Engineer Vextal. "Our technology was perfected over centuries." "The humans don't care about perfection," Krextoth replied. "They care about function. They take our technology apart, understand how it works, then rebuild it to work better." The display changed to show a recent battle near the Proxima system. Human ships moved through space in formations that seemed random, but proved devastatingly effective. "Watch their tactics," Krextoth continued. "No other species fights like this. They use every piece of debris, every asteroid, every spatial anomaly as a weapon or shield. They turn their own destroyed ships into mines. They've even learned to use stellar radiation as a weapon." Representative Quindara, whose people had been among the first conquered by the Confederation, spoke up. "Admiral, surely our superior numbers will eventually overwhelm them?" Krextoth's expression darkened. "That's the other problem, they're not fighting alone anymore." The display showed intelligence reports that sent murmurs of fear through the council chamber. Dozens of Confederation client species were quietly supporting the human rebellion. Some provided resources and safe harbors. Others shared intelligence about Confederation fleet movements. A few had even begun open revolts. "The humans have a talent for making allies," Krextoth explained. "They don't conquer species and force them to serve. They liberate worlds and ask for voluntary cooperation. It's a completely different approach to building power." On the liberated world of Keshan III, Commander Lisa Rodriguez walked through the rebuilt capital city alongside Mayor Thekvar, a being whose people had served the Confederation as forced laborers for 2 centuries. "Your people have given us hope," Thekvar said, his turtle-like features showing emotions his species had not been allowed to express for generations. We had forgotten what freedom felt like. Lisa nodded, watching human engineers work alongside Kashani workers to rebuild the city's infrastructure. We fight for everyone's right to choose their own destiny. That includes your people. But why? Tekvar asked. You could have demanded tribute from us like the Confederation did. You have the power now. Lisa stopped walking and faced the alien mayor. Because that's not who we are. Humans learned long ago that the strongest societies are built on cooperation, not domination. We're stronger when we work together as equals. This conversation was happening on hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Human forces, wherever they went, brought a message that no species had heard in millennia. You have the right to be free. Back in the solar system, Dr. Elena Vasquez had been promoted to head of human research and development. Her teams worked in laboratories hidden throughout the asteroid belt, developing weapons and technologies that the Confederation couldn't predict or counter. Show me the latest development, she told her lead engineer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Yuki activated a holographic display showing a new type of human warship. We call it the Prometheus class. It's built using Confederation hull materials but with human design principles. The ship on the display looked different from both human and alien vessels. It was angular where Confederation ships were curved, practical where they were elegant, and covered with modifications that served specific tactical purposes. The key innovation is modularity, Yuki explained. Confederation ships are built as single units. If one system fails, the whole ship is compromised. Our ships are designed so every component can be quickly replaced, modified, or repurposed during battle. Elena studied the design with approval. What's the combat effectiveness? In simulations, a single Prometheus can engage 3 Confederation cruisers simultaneously. But the real advantage is adaptability. We can modify the ship's configuration based on the specific enemy we're facing. How long until we can begin production? The first squadron launches next week. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of the Confederation capital, Intelligence Director Sarthol presented his most disturbing report to a closed session of the High Council. The humans are not just winning individual battles, he explained to the assembled leaders. They're changing the fundamental nature of warfare itself. His presentation showed tactical analyses that challenged everything the Confederation thought they knew about military science. Traditional galactic warfare follows predictable patterns, Sarthul continued. Fleet engagements occur at specific distances. Ships use standard attack formations. Supply lines follow established routes. The humans ignore all of these conventions. The display showed a recent battle where human forces had hidden inside a nebula, using its radiation to mask their approach. When Confederation ships entered the cloud, they found themselves surrounded by enemies attacking from directions that should have been impossible. They fight in 3 dimensions while we fight in 2, Sarthul explained. They use time as a weapon, appearing where they're least expected when we're most vulnerable, most disturbing. They seem to enjoy fighting against impossible odds. Surely they must have weaknesses, Chancellor Thisra demanded. They do, Sarthul admitted. Their technology is still crude compared to ours. Their ships are often held, together with improvised repairs. Their training is inconsistent compared to our professional military castes. Then how are they winning? Because they don't fight like individuals, Chancellor. They fight like a single organism with billions of minds. When one human learns something useful, every human knows it within days. When one human develops a new tactic, every human commander adapts it to their situation. The intelligence director brought up intercepted human communications that illustrated his point. Human commanders across the galaxy were constantly sharing information, discussing new strategies, and learning from each other's successes and failures. They call it crowdsourced warfare, Sarthul said. Instead of relying on a few military geniuses, they use the collective intelligence of their entire species. What do you recommend? Thisra asked. Immediate negotiation for terms of surrender. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia couldn't accept the idea of surrendering to newcomers who had been spacefaring for less than a century. But that decision was taken out of their hands when the humans launched their most audacious operation yet. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez, who had taken command of the human fleet after Captain Chen's heroic sacrifice, stood on the bridge of the new flagship Indomitable. Around her, the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for the war's decisive moment. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez," she broadcast to the 1,000 vessels under her command. "Today we end this war, not through conquest, but through liberation." Operation Prometheus was humanity's masterstroke. Instead of attacking the Confederation's military strongholds, human fleets simultaneously appeared at every major population center in the galaxy, not to destroy them but to broadcast a message. On 800 worlds, human voices spoke in translated languages, delivering the same simple statement: "People of the galaxy, you have the right to choose your own government. The Confederation's 3,000 years of rule end today. Join us in building something better." The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, species that had been conquered centuries ago suddenly remembered what independence meant. Revolts began on dozens of worlds. Confederation fleets found themselves fighting not just humans, but rebellions on their own member planets. But the masterstroke wasn't the revolts. It was what happened next. All Confederation. The ancient citadel of Zephyria Prime had stood for 5,000 years as the symbol of galactic order. Its crystal spires reached toward the stars, each one representing a different era of Confederation rule. Now, as Admiral Lisa Rodriguez walked through its great halls, she saw something the galaxy had never witnessed: the peaceful transfer of power from an empire to a democracy. "Admiral Rodriguez," Supreme Chancellor Tessera said as they met in the council chamber, where decisions affecting trillions of beings had been made for millennia. "I must admit, your species has surprised us all." Lisa looked around the vast room, noting the empty seats where representatives of various species had once gathered to receive orders from the Confederation leadership. Many of those worlds had already declared independence and were forming their own governments. "Chancellor, we never wanted to destroy the Confederation," Lisa replied. "We just wanted the right to exist as free beings." Tessera's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. "Yet in fighting for that right, you have shown every species in the galaxy that freedom is possible. Did you plan this outcome?" "No," Lisa answered honestly. "We planned to survive. Everything else happened because other species chose freedom when they saw it was possible." The formal surrender ceremony took place in the same chamber where the Confederation had planned humanity's conquest 4 years earlier. But it wasn't really a surrender in any traditional sense. Instead, it was the birth of something entirely new. Dr. Maria Santos, now representing Earth in galactic affairs, stood before representatives from over 400 worlds. Some were former Confederation members seeking to atone for past actions. Others were newly liberated species learning to govern themselves. All of them had come to help build what humans called the Galactic Coalition. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered," Maria began, "but as equals working toward a common goal, a galaxy where every species has the right to determine its own destiny." The Coalition's founding principles, written primarily by humans but refined by representatives from dozens of species, were revolutionary by galactic standards. No species could rule over another. Membership was voluntary and could be revoked at any time. Decisions affecting multiple worlds required consent from all involved parties. But the real changes were happening throughout the galaxy, as former Confederation worlds experienced freedom for the first time in centuries. On Keshan, Third Mayor Tekvar watched his people's children play in parks that had been forbidden under Confederation rule. Human engineers had helped them rebuild their cities, but more importantly, human teachers had helped them remember their own culture and language. "The humans gave us more than freedom," he told his wife as they watched their grandson play with human children who had come to Keshan as part of a cultural exchange program. "They gave us back ourselves." Similar scenes were playing out across hundreds of worlds. The Yithral people, who had been forced to work in Confederation mines for 800 years, were now building their own space stations. The Nefek, whose artistic traditions had been banned for being inefficient, were creating sculptures that combined their ancient styles with human techniques they had learned from Earth's artists. But the most remarkable transformation was happening among the Confederation's former warrior caste. Commander Torvash had served the Confederation military for 60 years, believing that order and discipline were the highest virtues. Now he stood in a human training facility on Mars, learning combat techniques that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. "Your people fight with emotions," he said to Colonel Thompson, who was personally overseeing the integration of former Confederation officers into coalition forces. "We fight with purpose," Thompson corrected. "When you're fighting for your family, your home, your freedom, emotion becomes strength instead of weakness." Torvash practiced the human concept of adaptive tactics with a mixed unit of humans and former Confederation soldiers. The exercise involved defending a position against superior numbers using improvised weapons and unconventional strategies. In Confederation doctrine, Torvash explained to his human instructor, we would establish a defensive perimeter and hold it until relieved or destroyed. "What would you do as a human?" the instructor asked. Torvash thought for a moment, then surprised himself with his answer. "I would make the enemy think I was defending the position while actually preparing to attack their supply lines from behind." "Now you're thinking like a human," the instructor said with approval. The training wasn't just about military tactics. Humans were teaching former Confederation species how to think creatively, how to solve problems by breaking rules instead of following them, and how to work together despite differences in culture and biology. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now director of the Coalition's Joint Research Initiative, oversaw the most ambitious scientific project in galactic history. In orbital laboratories around dozens of stars, human scientists worked alongside researchers from hundreds of species to develop technologies that no single culture could have created alone. The Confederation's mistake, Elena explained to a gathering of galactic scientists, was believing that one way of thinking was superior to all others. They standardized everything, which made them predictable and ultimately weak. Her presentation showed breakthrough technologies that combined human creativity with alien knowledge, faster-than-light engines that used principles from 6 different species, medical techniques that drew from the biological expertise of countless worlds, weapons systems that were effective but designed with built-in safeguards to prevent their use against civilian populations. "Diversity isn't just morally right," Elena continued. "It's strategically essential. Every species brings unique perspectives that solve problems in ways no other culture could imagine. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy with the new order. In the shadows of dead star systems, remnants of the Confederation's most loyal forces gathered under the command of Admiral Vex Thanor, a being whose species had ruled over others for so long that they had forgotten how to live any other way. "The humans must be stopped," Vex Thanor declared to his followers. "They're destroying the natural order of the galaxy. Some species are meant to lead and others are meant to follow." His fleet of hardline loyalists prepared for one final assault on Earth, believing that if they could destroy humanity's homeworld, the coalition would collapse and the old order could be restored. But Vex Thanor had made the same mistake as his predecessors. He underestimated how much the galaxy had changed. When his fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, they found themselves facing not just human ships, but vessels from over 200 different species, all flying coalition colors, and all there by choice. Admiral Rodriguez, commanding from the bridge of the massive coalition flagship New Horizon, opened communications with the rebel fleet. "Admiral Vex Thanor," she said, "you're outnumbered 10-1 by beings who chose to be here. Your own former allies are asking you to surrender peacefully. Don't make us destroy you." Vex Thanor's response was to open fire. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. The coalition fleet, using combined tactics developed by dozens of species working together, overwhelmed Vex Thanor's forces in less than an hour. But the true victory came afterward. When Vex Thanor's flagship was disabled, Rodriguez personally led the boarding party that captured him. As they faced each other in his command center, the former Confederation admiral expected to be executed. Instead, Rodriguez offered him the same choice every other being in the galaxy had been given. "You can spend the rest of your life in prison," she said, "or you can help us build something better. The choice is yours." 6 months later, Vexathanor was working as a tactical advisor for Coalition Defense Forces, his knowledge of Confederation military doctrine helping to train officers who would protect the new democracy from future threats. The transformation of the galaxy was not without problems. Some worlds struggled to adapt to self-governance after centuries of being told what to do. Trade disputes arose between species with very different economic systems. Cultural misunderstandings led to diplomatic crises that required careful mediation. But humans had experience with these problems too. They had spent their entire history learning to live with differences, to compromise without losing their principles, and to build societies that could function despite disagreements. Ambassador Sarah Kim, the former communications officer who had served under Captain Chen, now represented humanity in the Coalition's governing council. She spent her days helping species work through conflicts that would have led to war under the old system. "Democracy is messy," she explained to a group of newly liberated worlds struggling with their first free elections. "But it's our mess, chosen by us, not imposed by someone else. That makes all the difference." 5 years after the war began, the galaxy had been transformed. The Galactic Coalition included over 600 voluntary member worlds. Trade flowed freely between species that had never been allowed to interact under Confederation rule. Art, music, and literature from hundreds of cultures spread throughout space, creating a renaissance of